Right, so I'm in my GitHub account. So what I want to do is create a new repository. So this is going to be Tailwind CC YouTube. And let's create this repository now. So what I want to do is create a new folder. So if I go into my terminal over here, let's clear this out and let's zoom in. So here, what I want to do is go into my YouTube folder. So cd YouTube. And in here, I want to create a new folder. So make directory, and then this is going to be the Tailwind-YT. Press enter, and then we want to go into that. So it's cd of Tailwind YT ls, and now all we want to do is do code space dot, and this will open a VS Code terminal up for us. And what you could have done is you could have cloned from there instead of making the directory, but it's fine. So what we'll do now, we've got our VS Code terminal. We just need to open it. First of all, I want to check the node version that I'm on. So node-v, and it's version 14. So we should be on 18. So what I'm going to do is nvm use 18, and nvm stands for node version manager. So essentially, if you don't have this, the command won't work. So you need to download nvm for it to change your node versions. So now if we type node-v, you can see now we're on version 18. So what we need to do is install Vite. So Control R, which is a recursive search for what we've used in the past. So in my case, I'm typing in Vite. And you can see here, this is a previous command I've used, which is yarn create Vite tailwind --template. And the template that we want to use is react-ts. So let's go ahead and press enter. And now this will install everything for us. So what we can do is cd into Tailwind yarn and then yarn dev. So you can also use npm instead of yarn, but I prefer yarn. What I'm going to do is just move everything out into this folder. And then this Tailwind folder now we don't need, so let's just delete that. So now we're in the root directory of our project. All I want to do is do yarn to install all of our modules, so all of our node packages in our package.json file, which is what it says here. So once that installed everything, you should get a tsconfig JSON file as well, which we have. So now that's installed everything, you now have a node modules folder here, and we also have a yarn lock folder here as well. So what I also want to do is just check the git ignore file, which has everything that we need to ignore, which is fine. And again, the yarn lock is essentially the lock file that has all of our versions on there as well. So if we go into source and in main, you can see here we have our app being injected. So all we need to do now is do yarn dev to spin up the local machine. And I'm just going to copy localhost because we have the final one on 5173. I'm just going to go in here and paste in our project. And now you can see our Vite project is set up. So now what we need to do is install Tailwind and remove the boilerplate code. So let's go ahead and do that. So first off, let's go ahead and remove the boilerplate code. So if we go in our app.tsx here, what I'm going to do is just delete everything that we have and just do a p tag saying Tailwind CSS. And we also need to delete the use state for the initial count. So let's delete everything here. And I also want to delete everything in the app CSS because everything is inline. So we want to inject the styles in our code, in our HTML over here. So let's delete the app.css, but we want to keep the index.css. So let's Command A and delete everything in here. And let's zoom in actually in our project so we can see better. So now in our app.tsx, we have just Tailwind CSS, and in our index it's empty. We have our main as well. So now if we save everything and we go in here, you can see we have Tailwind CSS with no styling. So next thing we want to do is apply the styling. But first of all, we need to install Tailwind. To install Tailwind, there's a handy doc on their website here. Install Tailwind CSS with Vite. And there's other guides as well that you can use, such as Next.js and so on. So what we want to do essentially is follow this. So first off, we've done this first command here. The next thing we need to do is run this command over here. So npm install Tailwind CSS. But because we're using yarn, it's yarn add. So let's copy that and close this terminal down and do yarn add, and then paste in as a dev dependency Tailwind CSS, post CSS, and auto prefixer. So this will install all of the relevant packages that we need. if we go back in our guide over here, you can see npx Tailwind CSS init-p. So let's go ahead and install that as well. Now that has installed, and now you can see here we have a Tailwind config.js and also post CSS config.js. So essentially they are objects that we can pass in arguments into. So in our Tailwind config CSS, we need to make some further changes to the content. So let's go back onto the guide. You can see here it says configure your template paths. You can add the paths to all your template files in config.js. So essentially we want to inject the CSS. So we want to be able to use Tailwind in our source folder, anything to do with JS, TS, JSX or TSX files. So let's copy this and replace this one here and paste that in. And then we want to go in back in here in our index.css. We want to copy this and inject the base styles for Tailwind. So index.css and paste that in here. So let's save everything first. And then all we need to do is start the build process. So we just need to run yarn dev, and then we can copy this code as well. So let's do yarn dev and then close down the relevant files. And in here, what I want to do is inject some Tailwind. So h1 with a class name of text3xl font bold and underline. And let's see what that does. Let's move this in here. And now you can see it's got a font of bold, a text of 3XL, and also the underline here. So if we inspect it, essentially it's just normal CSS that's being applied onto the H1. So it's just a shortened version of normal CSS. So here you can see text decoration line of underline, font weight of 700, and then the font size. So the text 3XL class has a font size of 1.85 rem and 2.25 rem. So essentially what it's doing is it's applying correct CSS. So this class here is a font size in rem values. So normally you would make the mistake of making in the px values, but essentially this object is what text 3xl is. If we go into the docs over here, you can see there's tons of examples of how we can use everything in terms of our CSS. So in our case, we have the text. So again, you can search this and apply the relevant text styles that you want. What I also recommend doing is in our extensions, I do have a Tailwind extension. So if we search for Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, which essentially is auto-completing everything for us. So say I'm typing something in here, then it adds autocomplete on. So say I want padding, so P and then dash, and then you got the autocomplete feature here. And it's quite handy because what it does is it shows you the rem values as well, or the pixel values of the padding you want. If I wanted it on the padding as top, you do PT, and then you can see here it amends and shows you the updated IntelliSense values here. So that's a padding top of 14. And then we can also change the color. So the way to do that is text dash, and then you just type in the color. And there are various different colors that Tailwind offers you, or you could type in your own color. So if you have a hex code, you can do brackets like this and then put in your hex code, or we have preset colors. So in our docs over here, we have a list of all of the different colors that Tailwind offers. All you need to do is type in text dash and then the color name. So let's type in red for this example, and then the shade you can see of 600, and each one has a different hex code in here. So let's change our text to text red of 600. So now if I save and go into our project here, you can see the text is now red. So you can see all of the styles being applied on here. But what I want to do now is get started with the build. So essentially shortening your code and writing everything inline. If we was to write this inline with the classes, then it would be much longer than this is now. So now let's get